11. Crazy Submarine Discoveries. Number 11. Homemade Sub. Authorities made a remarkable discovery in the remote jungles of Ecuador in mid-2010. They found a 100-foot-long diesel and electric-powered submarine covered with camouflage markings. The sub, which was made by a drug cartel, was about to partake on its maiden voyage of illegal cocaine smuggling. Teams led by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration also busted a man at the scene. Experts searched the vessel and found that it was equipped with a periscope and air conditioning. It was perfectly capable of ocean journeys. They also found a replica World Cup trophy made of the illegal stimulant during their exploration of the craft. Number 10. Lake Michigan Sub. Chicago is one of the biggest cities in the United States. There are plenty of unique places to visit and interesting sights to behold, including the body of water that Chicago lies directly next to, Lake Michigan. A fascinating piece of history lies beneath the surface of the lake's water that is hidden from tourists' eyes. A German mine-laying UC-97 submarine was purposely sunk into the lake in 1919. The same year the Chicago Black Sox were deliberately bumbling their way to a World Series loss, the sub took something of a victory tour after the U.S. was on the winning side of the First World War. People were allowed to board the sub during the victory lap. Part of the armistice between the Allies and Germany, however, was that the captured UC-97 had to be sunk. It lies at the bottom of the lake to this day. Number 9. Underground Submarine Base. The Crimean Peninsula is home to an incredibly well-preserved underground submarine base that has been turned into a museum. During the Cold War, Joseph Stalin issued a directive to establish a fleet of nuclear submarines on the peninsula. Construction of the compound took place from 1953 to 1961. In 1993, the structure closed and was left unguarded and abandoned for a decade, during which time scavengers stripped the building of its metal. Finally, the local Marine Commission proposed and started construction of the present-day museum. Number 8. Nuclear subs. Britain built a fleet of nuclear submarines as part of their Cold War effort. When constructed, the vessels were state-of-the-art pieces of machinery. Over the years, however, they became obsolete, and the British Ministry of Defence simply needed a place to store them. Enter Devonport, which is located on the southern edge of the United Kingdom. In 2012, British authorities moved the submarines and their nuclear reactors to the town and just kind of left them there. Infuriated residents see the rusting vessels as an eyesore and a potential danger. They have been unsuccessfully lobbying the government to do something. But, as the UK lacks a facility to dispose of the reactors, no solution has been presented. Number 7. Coney Island's Yellow Submarine. Most submarines are built as a result of conflict and therefore have a history that is directly tied to times of war. A part of what makes the story of the Lode submarine in Coney Island fascinating is that it has nothing to do with war. Made journeys from America to Europe for 3 years before sinking in 1956 off the coast of New York. Maritime salvage law meant that the wreck and its trove of wealthy objects were lying in the water waiting to be claimed by anyone that could reach the craft. Number 6. Ancient Submarine. This remarkably old vessel sat in a cove on the shores of San Telmo in the Pearl Islands for years. Locals assumed it was a remnant from World War II. In 2001, the craft drew the attention of archaeologist James Delgado, who recounted its actual history. Incredibly, the submarine was constructed for the Pacific Pearl Company in Brooklyn, New York between 1863 and 1866. The company hoped to use the aptly named Submarine Explorer to harvest pearls and oysters in the Pearl Islands. While the craft did its job for several years, members of the crew would succumb to a mysterious illness only known as fever at the time. Looking back, people eventually realized that crew members were succumbing to decompression sickness. Because decompression sickness wasn't properly understood at the time, the craft was abandoned. Number 5. Sub in a pond. People were curious and amazed to see a submarine partially emerged at a pond in a district of Moscow, Russia. Everyone wondered how and why it got into the small body of water on the popular European social media website VK, where this picture of the vessel was published. The source was quickly revealed, and it was far from exciting and slightly disappointing. A construction company launched the submarine into the pond as an odd publicity stunt. Number 4. Czarist Sub. Ocean X, a team that makes money by exploring underwater wrecks and discovering historical treasures, uncovered a Russian sub dating back more than a century off the coast of Sweden. Experts determined that the sub was built in 1904 and sunk after colliding with a Swedish vessel in 1916. The submarine is around 66 feet long and 11.5 feet in width. Number 3. Failed Sub. The U-581 was a Nazi-built craft that was charged with destroying a British squad carrier in February 1942. The submarine failed its mission and was taken down by a British destroyer. Rather than surrender the vessel and its crew, the captain elected to let it sink while its crew attempted to get away. While most were taken prisoner, one officer on board made a miraculous escape by swimming 4 miles to land. Earlier this year, German researchers unearthed the historical relic off the coast of Azores in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Number 2. USS Herring. Russian divers that were part of a joint expedition into Russia's far eastern Kuril archipelago discovered the USS Herring, a World War II-era submarine in mid-2016. The highly decorated craft was on its 8th mission when it was sunk by the Japanese. Before it went down, it was able to sink several Japanese ships, making its final mission successful, despite the fact that it was dropped to the depths of the sea. Number 1. Simushir Island. Rumors circulated for years that the Soviet Union had established a secret submarine base on the northern end of Simushir Island, which lies about 250 miles off the coast of Japan. Eventually, it was revealed that the remote volcanic island did indeed hold an area that included a town that was built to surround a submarine base. At its peak, the village held around 3,000 people. 3 docks, only one of which is still there, were used for subs in between missions. Today, the entire place is rusted and has fallen into decay.